Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we have a beer that is half American, half Swedish, and on the Swedish side of things I know a lot about this brewery. On the American side of things I've heard some very good things about this brewery, particularly in the field of IPAs and sours. So for the Swedish side of things we are going to head up towards Stockholm and do another beer from Omnipollo, who of course are very well known for their big imperial stouts as well as doing some really nice IPAs. And for the American side of things we're going out to Richmond in Virginia and having my first look at a beer from the Veil Brewing Company. This one is called the Ra. It comes in at 11% ABV and it's a triple IPA with oat milk added to it, so I guess it will be somewhere along the lines of a hazy New England style IPA, this one. Very curious to see how it turns out. This beer was released on the 17th of May 2019 through the Små Partiers in Systembolaget over here. But as I say, two breweries who have a very good pedigree when it comes to IPAs and things like that. The guy in charge who brews for the Veil, he's got a ridiculous experience from other breweries that he's worked for as well. So very curious to see how this one turns out, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Omnipollo and my future reviews that hopefully I can do from the Veil Brewing. Very first encounter I'm having with them, but hopefully not the last. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers and another one for all the American beers. This beer review will appear in both of those lists, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Omnipollo first off then, since they are the home brewery in this case I guess. So Omnipollo was founded in 2011 by Henrik Fentia, who was a long-time home brewer, and Carl Grandin, who was a clothing designer. But the two met one day and they decided to start a brewery together after discussing how insular the craft beer scene in Sweden was, and indeed in other countries as well. But they wanted to reinvigorate the craft beer scene in Sweden, both from a stylistic sense and from a gastronomic point of view as well. So they felt that this partnership between a home brewer and a designer was actually very logical for them. But the name itself, Omnipollo, is derived from omnipotent chicken. So Omnipollo, pollo of course being Spanish for chicken, and these guys are gypsy brewers, so they've got no brewery of their own at the moment, and they use spare capacity at other breweries, and they brew many collaboration beers as a result of this, and they currently export to around 20 different markets, and they're continually expanding as well. Most of their beer, a lot of the imperial stouts are brewed at Duggesbryggeri, which is over in Gothenburg, and they brew a number of things at the Proefbrouwerij in Lochrister Hefte, just outside of Ghent in Belgium. Their bigger production beers such as Nebuchadnezzar and also, what was the other one? The Leon tends to be brewed there as well. So two of the beers that are quite regular in Systembolaget and for export, of course, they tend to be the ones that are brewed down in Belgium. But they also have their Omnipollo's Hat Bar as well in Stockholm, which is a collaboration with Pizza Hut. This has some really, really nice pizza, and it always has some very kind of unusual and exclusive Omnipollo beers as well. So do make sure that you check that out if you find yourself in Stockholm. It really is worth it, in fact. And the prices are pretty decent, to be honest with you. The pizzas are very, very good value, and the beers are, you know, pretty good, and you always get little kind of tasters of them too. So yeah, check out Omnipollo's Hat, and if you do get the chance, I would recommend that you try some of the Omnipollo beers. My personal favourite, I really do, if you want a good West Coast IPA, Nebuchadnezzar, you can't really go wrong with that. The Fata Morgana, if you're more into the New England side of things, and of course there's various different imperial stouts. The Noah Pecan Mud Pie is probably their most easily available one at the moment, I would say. So yeah, check out some of the beers from Omnipollo, because they tend to be pretty good at whatever they try. They're good at adding the flavour essences into beer and then balancing it, particularly with the stouts, but they're also very good at brewing quite straight up beers too. So yeah, definitely one of the Swedish breweries that you want to check out. And as always, if you want to learn a little bit more, check out the brewery website, and you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and that'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on there. So anyway, on to the Veil Brewing then, on to the second part of my brewery notes. So as I mentioned to you earlier, the Veil Brewing are based in Richmond in Virginia, and the company was founded by Matt Tarpey, who had previously been a musician, and also Dustin Durance. So he grew, basically, Matt grew tired of his lifestyle as a touring musician, and he wanted to look at changing careers. He apparently applied to be a fireman, but he also worked in the construction industry for a while as well. But one of his friends was homebrewing, and he tried the beers, and he got really quite interested in the process of brewing, but at the time he had no real aspirations of actually being a professional brewer. But he found that there was a small brewery called O'Connor Brewing close to his worksite, and he volunteered there a little bit. He used to help them mash in the morning, and then he would go and volunteer to work after his shift at the construction site as well. But later on they asked him to join permanently as a brewer, and in 2012 he moved to Dover in New Hampshire to join Portsmouth Brewing under Todd Mott for about a year. But Todd actually decided to leave the company, and this really made Matt very sad actually. So then he went to work at the Alchemist Brewery in late 2013. During his vacation time there though, he actually went over to work to internship at Cantillon in Brussels, and this was where he learned a lot about sour beers, which is one of the beer styles that the Veil Brewery are quite famous for actually. But he then later went to work for Hill Farmstead as well. But his father's health deterioration unfortunately kind of led him, or unfortunate for his father, fortunate for the creation of the Veil Brewing Company, but his father's health eventually took him back to Virginia, and it was there that the brewery was established along with Dustin, who'd been in contact with Matt for a good number of years. They'd been discussing beer and how the beer scene was growing in Virginia. But the brewery opened its doors officially in April 2016 after they borrowed a scary amount of money apparently to start it up, and this was opened in the Scots Addition neighbourhood of Richmond, and they now have an on-site tap room, and they're currently working on a second location in Forest Hill as well, and they're hoping to open that in early to mid 2020. And at the moment on Untappd, as of May 2019, they've got around 450 different types of beer listed there. And if you think that this brewery's only been in existence since around April 2016, so that's just over 3 years that these guys have been around, to brew 450 different types of beer, that's pretty damn impressive, you have to say. So a very, very prolific brewery. And this is one of the names, the Veil Brewing is one that I keep kind of hearing about actually. I didn't realise they were from Richmond. I thought they were from a little bit further north in New England, right enough. But it's one of the breweries who really seem to be doing a lot of collaborations with different breweries around Europe. I'm sure they've done something with Amar Bryghus just over the water in Copenhagen as well. So yeah, one of the American breweries that I think we'll start seeing a lot more of actually in the next couple of years. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about the Veil Brewing Company just now. Again, you can check out the brewery website. There's not too much information on the website, so I'd recommend more that you follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, and that'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on. And if you're interested in the different beer listings from both of these breweries, of course, I would recommend the Untappd pages as well. Omnipollo's website does have a really good list of all of these, the different beers that they do, and you can see all the crazy artwork and things like that that Carl Grandin has designed. But yeah, that's all you need to know about both breweries. Let's get on and actually taste the beer. So like I said to you at the start of the video, this one is an 11% triple IPA with oat milk added to it. It says there's wheat malt in here as well. It doesn't say anything about oats, so yeah, other than oat milk. So yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how this one turns out. One of the interesting points to make, I guess, in the case of Omnipollo is that Fata Morgana, apparently they brewed that beer with the oaty malt base before they really knew what a New England IPA was. So it's kind of an interesting one, this, and to use oat milk rather than plain oats in an American in a beer involving an American brewery is quite an interesting step as well. But there you can see some really nice artwork once again from Omnipollo there, from Carl Grandin. I'm not sure exactly what that's meant to be. It looks a little bit almost like some of the communist artwork with the globe, but then again it's got the stars and the cobra, so it's almost got a little bit of a kind of Middle Eastern influence as well. It's kind of interesting that. I think I might keep a hold of this can actually, or try and take the label off. But yeah, it looks very, very nice. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. As I said, an 11% triple IPA with oat milk added to the brew, and again this one was released through the Smart Partiers in Systembolaget here in Sweden on the 17th of May 2019. So yeah, this one is a lot kind of clearer than I thought it was going to be on the pour. I thought this one would be a really kind of milky looking IPA, kind of similar to Fata Morgana actually. But yeah, as you can see with this one, it's actually poured a nice, quite rich orangey amber colour, this one. There's a third finger rather, of quite a frothy white heads. Yeah, definitely some really nice fine bubbles there, but you've got one or two big bubbles kind of coming out on the top of the head there, but one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see this beer is pretty opaque, but it's not the haziest kind of hazy IPA that you're going to come across. It's quite interesting that this one, in terms of appearance, it could almost be a little bit of a West Coast IPA. Some breweries filter their West Coast IPAs, so maybe it's more accurate to say that this, in terms of its appearance, is a little bit along the lines of a West Coast IPA. I've always found the New England ones are a bit brighter and yellow rather than the orange as well, but I guess it just depends what brewery it is you have them from and what malt base they use. But yeah, really nice looking beer, this one. In terms of an IPA, nothing particularly surprising about this one, but as I say, a little bit more orange than some of the New England IPAs I've had in recent times, and a little bit less hazy as well, to be honest, but I'm sure it will be an awesome beer. It's always just nice to take a little look at the appearance. But let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Oh, I'll tell you straight away with this beer, you can smell that it's a bit of a boozy beast. You can smell that alcohol coming out of it. But yeah, with this beer then, you've got a nice kind of, it's really interesting how it goes together. You can definitely smell a little bit of the kind of wheaty, white bready sort of thing. The oat milk seems to actually be quite mild in this, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I do like how this one comes together. It's with triple IPAs, I always find that the aromas are a little bit less complex than the double IPAs, to be honest with you, because it's really, I think with triple IPAs, a lot of the effort is just to cover up the booze in some way, to be honest with you. And you can detect that a little bit with this beer. I mean, you get the nice white bready, wheaty qualities, you get a little bit of the oaty milk coming out, and there's also a kind of caramelly brown sugar thing to this one. And I always find with when you have these kind of hazier IPAs, I think when you get above sort of 8-9%, you need to add a little bit of caramel or biscuit malt or something like that just to cover the alcohol warmth. I think that's where the New England IPA starts to struggle in a way that the West Coast IPA doesn't particularly. But yeah, you can smell that it is a boozy beast, this one, so just be aware of that when you go into the aroma. It really does lean towards the kind of malty side of things, the IPA on this one, I would say. But yeah, and the hoppy side of things, you can pick up a nice little bit of a floral aromaticity to the beer. It's interesting. I mean, I'm finding a little touch of an orangey note to this one, but you've also got some kind of passion fruity and mango notes as well. So yeah, there is a little bit of a fruitiness there, but it's kind of blended in with that strong boozy note. It's almost like a very kind of alcoholic fruit cake or something in some ways, like an oily alcoholic syrup, like liqueur type thing. So yeah, as I say, the aroma on this one isn't the most pungent aroma, I think, that you're going to come across from Omnipollo. I can't speak for the Veil Brewing, of course, because this is my first encounter with anything from them. But yeah, it's a nice smelling beer, this. Nice big oily fruits, as I say, oranges, passion fruits, maybe a little touch of mango or something in there. It's a good blend between a strong orange and passion fruit, I think. And you've also got that nice kind of malty quality to the beer. There is a little bit of floral aromaticity from the green side of the hops. Maybe a tiny little touch of earthiness in there as well and some grassiness, but to me the green side of the hops in this beer are a little bit more floral rather than anything else, but it is a bit of a malty beast, this one. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but let's have a taste of this one and just see how we get on. So this one is the a triple IPA with oat milk added to it from Omnipollo in Stockholm here in Sweden, and a collaboration brew with the Veil Brewing Company, who are from Richmond over in Virginia. We seem to be getting a lot of a lot of Virginia breweries over here in Europe now, which is quite cool. We always get different beers from America in kind of spurts, if you like. So yeah, let's get stuck into this one then. Slange Skull. Yeah. That's kind of interesting, this one. It's, in terms of its mouthfeel and stuff, it actually, to me, comes across as more of a, it's almost like a hybrid between the New England and the West Coast IPA, but it leans a little bit more towards the West Coasty side of things for me, just because of the oiliness in the mouthfeel. It's not the creamiest IPA that you've kind of come across, but it certainly does have a level of smoothness that you would expect to the New England IPA, but yeah, it's a really interesting blend of things. That I'd be curious to know what they were kind of aiming for with this one actually. But I mean, the main question is, we can debate about styles all day. The main question is whether it's a good beer or not, and I will say straight away that it is. Yeah. I do like how this one's kind of coming across. The one thing with the triple IPAs, I would say, it's quite. This one is kind of. I've always found them to be very kind of strong in the booze. The hoppy side of this beer, to me, comes across quite smooth actually, and I'm not sure. I mean, this beer, it has a little bit of IBU to it, but otherwise it's very, very smooth. And I'm always used to the triple IPAs having a big kind of hoppy bite to balance out the kind of sweetness from the malt base and also the booziness as well. And yeah, the thing that's, as I said, really interesting about this one is just that almost balance between the New England and the West Coasty side of things. So yeah, let's just start off with the malt base then, because I think that kind of maybe makes my thoughts just a little bit clearer. So middle of your palate, you can feel this nice, smooth, white bready, wheaty quality. That's what's kind of forming the baseline on your palate there. On top of that, you feel it's almost, the middle of the palate is kind of quite slick in a certain way. It does almost feel as if the oat milk just kind of goes straight across the wheaty side of the beer. So it's almost like you've got a layer of wheat, then you've got the oat milk just kind of sliding across on top of that. When you go to the very centre of your palate, you've got a nice kind of, you definitely have a nice, you say it's definitely a kind of brown, a boozy, brown sugary note, quite a sweet caramel to be honest with you, a little touch toasted maybe, but mainly quite a sweet caramel. And the malt base in that regard is quite simple, but you can detect some of the booziness in there. It has that really syrupy, almost liqueurish type boozy quality to it, which is interesting. Yeah. It's almost like a kind of alcoholic, dried fruit in the middle of your palate that's mixing in with all these brown sugars. It's quite interesting. It's almost just got a little bit of a, I want to say like a kind of apricot-y essence to it or something like that. No, some dog's going crazy. But yeah, so with this one, it's nice just, the malt base in this one is quite interesting. The beer overall is very smooth, so in some ways it has the kind of sweeter brown sugary aspect that you'd expect of the West Coast IPAs, but it does have the kind of smoother quality that you would want from the New England IPAs. So it's a really just interesting blend of things, this beer. On the hoppy side of the beer, back corners of the palate, I think there's a little touch of earthiness there, and as you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, you've got a nice sort of floral aromaticity to the beer, but again, it's very, very smooth. I am wondering how fresh this beer is. It's either very, very low in its either just very low in its IBUs and its hop content generally, or it's not quite as fresh as it should be. And I'm not quite sure with this one, to be honest, because it does have a nice kind of fruity aspect to it. So yeah, this is an unusual one. I've not come across a triple IPA quite like this one before. So yeah, it is quite an unusual one, that, and I do like it. It's got a good bunch of flavour in it, but it's one that really does get your brain thinking a little bit when you're a big beer nerd. So yeah, hoppy side of the beer is also very, very smooth. Behind the front curve of the palate, of course, as I say, you get that nice lighter grassiness behind the front curve of your tongue, but then behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters start to come out of the beer. And for me, this one does have a good little bit of a tropical note to it. There is passion fruit in there. A little bit of mango as well, but there is some kind of tangerine oranges. I think there's a bit of mosaic in here because you've got the earthiness at the back of the palate, which mosaic will give you, and you've got a nice earthy quality to the beer. And I think there's either Galaxy or Citra in this one as well, or both. I think it's one of the. I think it's maybe a 3-hop bill, this one. Either that or it's at its mosaic and one of those two. But yeah, the fruitiness of this beer is pretty nice. The fruity side of the beer is quite oily, but if you go to the back of that bubble, I think there's a little touch of a mangoey passion fruit note there. When you come a little bit further forward on it, it's more oily and orange, more of a tangerine note rather than a straight up orange, if you like. The other hop for orange, of course, it's Azaka, of course, but the main one used to always be Amarillo. They've changed to Mosaic these days. You've got Pacifica in New Zealand and Mandarina Bavaria from Germany as well, but a nice kind of oily orangey quality. And slightly juicier in front of that, and you've got a little touch of mango in there too, which would indicate Citra, I think. But yeah, it's an interesting blend of flavours, this one. On the very front tip of the tongue, you've almost got a little touch of a kind of berry, like almost like a blueberry lychee kind of thing going on too. So it's a really interesting blend of flavours, this one. It's not the most punchy triple IPA that I've come across. In fact, it really is more smooth and sweet rather than anything else. So it's very quirky within that kind of triple IPA category, and I'm guessing the oat milk, you can really feel with this one, the oat milk really just dominates the sweet side of things, but then you've got some of the booziness turning into a more caramelly sweetness. So if you have to place this one in a style category, it's quite difficult because it has a malty character that to me is more like a West Coast IPA, but at the same time it has more of the kind of New England smoothness, if you like. So yeah, it's difficult to place this one. I would say that on flavour aspects it is more of a New England IPA with its low bitterness and smooth hops and things like that, and the fruitiness, in fairness, is a bit juicy, but the fruity side of the beer to me is more oily, which is what you would get in a West Coast IPA, and you've also got the sweeter side of the malt base too. So you know, you see what I mean. It does have aspects of both types of IPA, in my opinion. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It's quite almost, to me, it almost comes across as quite syrupy and medicinal as well. So an interesting take on the triple IPA, I have to admit. Is it the punchiest and best beer that I've had from Omnipollo? I wouldn't say so. I think, you know, Fata Morgana is a very difficult beer to beat, and in terms of the West Coast IPAs, you've also got Nebuchadnezzar as well. So it's an interesting one, this, and I think it's the first triple IPA from Omnipollo that I've reviewed. But it's more. This one isn't the punchiest and best beer that I've had from them, I have to say, but I do like it. I don't know if I would drink this one again. I mean, at 11%, it is a little bit of a treat beer, this, but I do like the flavour kind of combination that goes on in here, but it's not quite as bold and as punchy or as sweet or anything as you'd expect. When you have an Omnipollo beer, you do always expect it to have that little bit of sweetness to it, and they're very good at adding the adjuncts into the beers as well when they want to. So yeah, the Veil Brewing, again, a brewer that has a very good pedigree when it comes to the triple IPAs, but this beer, to be honest, very, very smooth in its flavour. A little bit of oily fruit, a little bit of caramelly sweetness, so aspects of both the West Coast and the New England IPA in this one, but it is a bit of a boozy beast, and it covers its alcohol very well, we should say that as well. So let's focus on the mouthfeel of this one a little bit then. I would say this one, pretty full-bodied beer, carbonation is very smooth. To me, the mouthfeel has a really good balance between the kind of smoother side of things and the more oily side of things. It does lean a little bit more towards the oily side of things, I would say. I think you're lucky if you get 20 IBUs out of this beer. It's ridiculously smooth, and I think that's the oat milk that's doing that. The green side of the hops, it does have a bit of floral aromaticity to it, and of course you've got that nice juicy fruity ester popping out of the beer as well. So overall, it's a really nice kind of interesting one. But as I always say, it's cool to try random beers like this. Not the most punchy and kind of mind blowing beer I've had from Omnipollo, but it's always interesting to try the new inventions that they seem to come up with. And the Veil Brewing, like I say, are a brewery who seem to have a very good pedigree when it comes to IPAs as well, so hopefully I can try some of their own beers for you on the channel at some point too. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Ra, and a triple IPA at 11% with oat milk added to the brew from Omnipollo in Stockholm here in Sweden, and the Veil Brewing Company, who are from Richmond in Virginia. So yeah, let's leave it at that. An interesting beer, this one, aspects of both the New England and the West Coast IPA in here, in my opinion. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are, both from Omnipollo and from the Veil, and hopefully I can return to the Veil Brewing at some point in the near future, and I know I'll review some more beers from Omnipollo soon. Check out my social media, check out both of these breweries and have a taste of some of their beers, and I'll catch you guys later. The Ra from Omnipollo here in Stockholm here in Sweden, and the Veil Brewing Company in Richmond in Virginia. Until the next time, slanja just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slanja, skål.